The golden lights of the Grand Meridian Hotel shimmered against the evening sky, casting a warm glow over the rows of luxury cars arriving at the entrance. Inside, the ballroom buzzed with laughter, music, and the quiet hum of ambitious professionals eager to celebrate another successful year. Sophia Carter stood before the mirror in their apartment, adjusting a silver earring while glancing toward her husband. "Are you ready?" she asked with a hopeful smile. Ethan Carter looked up from fastening the buttons on his navy blue jacket. Unlike many men attending the gala, he had chosen a simple suit without flashy accessories or designer labels. "As ready as I'll ever be," he said. Sophia laughed softly. "You say that every time I invite you anywhere." "Because it's true every time." She walked over and straightened his tie. "You know, everyone has been asking about you." "That sounds dangerous." "It isn't. I just don't talk much about our personal life at work." "Neither do I." "That explains why nobody knows anything about you." Ethan smiled. "And I like to keep it that way." Sophia shook her head affectionately. "You're impossible." Despite her teasing, she loved this quality about him. While many successful people sought attention, Ethan avoided it. He rarely talked about achievements, never boasted about money, and preferred quiet evenings at home over public events. Still, tonight mattered to Sophia. The annual company gala was one of the biggest events of the year. Employees from every department would attend, along with senior executives and important guests. For months, her coworkers had asked whether her husband would finally come. Tonight, he had agreed. As they entered the hotel ballroom, Sophia's eyes lit up. The room was magnificent. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like frozen waterfalls. Elegant centerpieces decorated dozens of round tables. Soft music floated through the air while servers moved gracefully among the guests carrying trays of refreshments. "Wow," Ethan said. Sophia grinned. "Not bad, right?" "Not bad at all." Several coworkers immediately noticed her arrival. "Sophia." A woman hurried over and embraced her. "You made it." "Of course," Sophia replied. The woman turned toward Ethan. "And this must be your mysterious husband." Sophia laughed. "Yes, this is Ethan. Nice to finally meet you." "You too," Ethan said politely. More introductions followed. One after another, colleagues greeted Sophia warmly and expressed curiosity about Ethan. Most were friendly, though some seemed disappointed that the mysterious husband was simply a quiet, ordinary-looking man. No expensive watch, no flashy designer suit, no loud confidence, just calm eyes and a gentle smile. Ethan didn't seem to notice, or perhaps he simply didn't care. For the first hour, everything went smoothly. Sophia introduced him to co-workers from various departments, and Ethan listened attentively to their stories. He asked thoughtful questions, remembered names, made people laugh with dry humor. Gradually, Sophia relaxed. Maybe tonight would be easier than she'd feared. Then Victor Langford arrived. The atmosphere shifted almost immediately. As regional operations director, Victor was one of the most powerful figures in the company. Tall, impeccably dressed, and constantly surrounded by admirers, he carried himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to being the center of attention. Employees greeted him enthusiastically as he made his way through the room. "Victor, good evening, sir. Congratulations on another great year." Victor accepted the praise with practiced ease. Then his eyes landed on Sophia. "Ah, Sophia." She smiled professionally. "Good evening, Victor." Victor approached. "And this must be your husband." Sophia nodded. "Yes, Ethan." Victor extended his hand. Ethan shook it. "Pleasure to meet you." Victor's smile seemed friendly enough. At first. "So Ethan," Victor said, "what do you do?" Sophia noticed a familiar look in his eyes. It was the look he often wore when evaluating people, judging them, ranking them. Ethan answered simply, "I work in business." Victor chuckled. "Business is a broad term." "I suppose it is." "What kind of business?" Ethan smiled politely. "A variety of things." Something about the answer seemed to irritate Victor, perhaps because it offered no opportunity for comparison. "Well," Victor said, taking a sip from his glass, "I always admire people with ambition. Ambition can be useful." "Absolutely." Victor glanced around at nearby employees. "Of course, Some people achieve more with it than others. A few co-workers laughed lightly. Sophia felt her stomach tighten. The comment wasn't openly rude. Not yet, but she knew Victor well. He enjoyed establishing dominance in conversations, especially when he believed someone couldn't challenge him. Ethan remained calm. I suppose success means different things to different people. Victor smirked, a philosophical answer. Maybe. The conversation moved on, but Victor kept returning. Each time, his comments became slightly sharper, slightly more personal. So, Ethan, do you travel much for work? Occasionally. Coach or business class? A few people laughed. Ethan smiled. Whichever gets me there. Victor grinned. Practical man. Later, during dinner, Victor stopped by their table again. You know, he announced loudly enough for several nearby guests to hear, Sophia is one of our most talented employees. Sophia smiled politely. Thank you. Victor nodded dramatically. We've always wondered how she manages to stay so grounded. Several people looked toward Ethan. Victor continued. Now I understand. Laughter spread across the table. Sophia forced a smile. The implication was obvious. Ethan's modest appearance had become the joke. Yet Ethan merely took a sip of water, unbothered, or appearing to be. The evening continued. The jokes continued too, each one earning a little more laughter, each one pushing the boundaries of professionalism. Sophia's embarrassment grew with every passing minute. She wanted to say something, wanted to defend her husband. But Victor controlled promotions, projects, and careers. Many employees were afraid to challenge him, including her. As the night approached its final hour, a stage was prepared near the front of the ballroom. Victor stepped onto it to deliver his annual speech. Applause echoed through the room. He thanked executives, praised department achievements, celebrated company growth. Everything seemed normal. Then his gaze found Sophia's table. Before we finish, Victor said with a smile, I'd like to recognize some outstanding employees. More applause followed. Several names were announced. Then Victor paused dramatically. And of course, Sophia Carter. The room clapped warmly. Sophia stood briefly. Thank you. Victor smiled. An exceptional employee. More applause. Then he added, proof that talent sometimes appears in the most surprising places. Laughter rippled through the audience. Sophia's smile faded. Victor pointed casually toward Ethan. After meeting her husband tonight, I think we can all agree she's carrying the family reputation on her shoulders. A wave of laughter exploded across the ballroom. Much louder this time. Dozens of faces turned toward Ethan. Some amused, some uncomfortable, some shocked. Sophia felt heat rush into her face. Her heart sank. The humiliation was no longer subtle. It was public, deliberate, cruel. For a moment, she couldn't even look at her husband. The room seemed frozen between laughter and disbelief. Victor stood proudly on stage, clearly pleased with himself. The spotlight of attention remained fixed on Ethan. Every eye in the ballroom watched him, waiting to see how he would react, waiting for anger, waiting for embarrassment, waiting for something. But Ethan simply sat quietly, calm, composed, his expression unreadable. And somehow, that calmness made the silence that followed even heavier. Sophia looked at him, her heart aching. She had invited him here. She had brought him into this. And now the entire room was watching as her husband endured humiliation at the hands of her boss. The laughter slowly faded. The ballroom became strangely quiet. Victor's smile remained firmly in place. But for the first time that evening, something about Ethan's steady gaze seemed to unsettle him. And as the silence stretched across the room, nobody could have guessed that the most shocking moment of the night had not yet arrived. The silence that followed Victor Langford's joke seemed to stretch endlessly across the ballroom. A few guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Others stared down at their tables, suddenly finding their glasses and plates far more interesting than the scene unfolding before them. Victor's smile remained fixed, but it was no longer receiving the reaction he had expected. Instead of roaring laughter, there was only awkward quiet. Then Ethan slowly rose from his chair. Every eye followed him. Sophia felt her pulse racing. She feared he might finally respond with anger. No one would have blamed him. Victor had spent most of the evening mocking him, and the final insult had crossed every line of professionalism and decency. Yet when Ethan stood, his face remained calm. He straightened his jacket and looked toward the stage. "Thank you for your thoughts, Victor," he said evenly. The room seemed surprised by the gentleness of his voice. Victor blinked. Clearly, this wasn't the reaction he had prepared for. Ethan continued, "I've always believed that people reveal the most about themselves when they speak about others." The statement wasn't loud. It wasn't aggressive, but it landed with remarkable weight. Several employees exchanged glances. Victor's smile weakened slightly. Ethan offered a small nod. "I hope everyone enjoys the rest of the evening." Then he sat down. That was all. No argument. No confrontation. No attempt to embarrass anyone. Just a simple response delivered with dignity. Ironically, it made Victor look far worse than any angry outburst ever could have. The ballroom remained quiet for another moment before scattered applause began. At first it came from only a handful of people. Then more joined in. Victor quickly laughed and attempted to regain control. "Well then," he said, "let's continue with the celebration." The music resumed shortly afterward, and conversations gradually returned. But the atmosphere had changed. The mood felt strained, uneasy. Sophia sat beside Ethan, guilt weighing heavily on her chest. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. Ethan looked at her. "For what?" "For bringing you here." His expression softened immediately. "Sophia, I shouldn't have asked you to come. You wanted to spend the evening together. I didn't think this would happen." "Neither did I." She lowered her eyes. "I feel terrible." Ethan reached over and gently squeezed her hand. "You have nothing to apologize for." "But he humiliated you." "He tried." The faint smile that followed surprised her. "Tried?" Ethan nodded. "People only humiliate you if you allow them to decide your value." Sophia stared at him. "How are you so calm?" Ethan glanced around the ballroom. Years of experience had taught him something important. The loudest person in a room wasn't always the strongest, and the person holding the most power rarely needed to announce it. "I've learned that anger usually creates more problems than it solves." His answer felt strangely meaningful, almost as though he were speaking from experience far beyond what she understood. Before Sophia could ask more, a disturbance near the entrance caught everyone's attention. Several executives had just arrived. They were late, very late. Most employees barely noticed at first, but senior management certainly did. The newcomers were among the highest-ranking leaders in the company, people whose schedules were normally impossible to secure. Their arrival immediately attracted attention. Victor noticed them too. His confidence returned. He hurried toward the entrance with a broad smile. "Good evening." The executives greeted him politely. Yet something seemed unusual. Their attention wasn't focused on Victor. Instead, their eyes moved across the ballroom, searching, looking for someone. One of them spotted Ethan. His expression immediately brightened. "There he is." Another executive smiled. "About time we found him." Victor frowned slightly. "Found who?" To his surprise, the group walked right past him, past several department heads, past senior managers, directly towards Sophia's table. Conversations began slowing again. Employees watched curiously. Sophia looked up as three distinguished executives approached. One of them extended his hand immediately. "Ethan." Ethan stood. "It's good to see you." The executive smiled warmly. "You should have told us you were attending." "I wasn't planning to." Clearly, they laughed together. Not the nervous laughter people had given Victor all evening. This was genuine respect, the kind shared between equals. Sophia blinked. She had never seen these executives interact with anyone this way, especially not someone outside senior leadership. More executives soon joined them, each greeting Ethan with remarkable familiarity. One shook his hand with both of his. Another asked about his family. A third thanked him for advice he'd received months earlier. Around the ballroom, whispers began spreading. "Who is he? How does he know them? Why are they treating him like that? I've never seen those executives act this way." Even Victor seemed confused now. His smile had disappeared entirely. He watched from across the room as yet another senior leader approached Ethan. The tension in the ballroom gradually shifted. Earlier, people had viewed Ethan as an ordinary guest. Now uncertainty was replacing their assumptions. Sophia herself felt bewildered. She knew Ethan was successful. She knew he invested in businesses, but she had never witnessed anything like this. One executive turned toward her. "You must be Sophia." She nodded. "It's a pleasure to meet you." "The pleasure is ours." The executive smiled. "We've heard wonderful things about you." Sophia glanced at Ethan. He simply smiled back, still calm, still quiet, as though nothing unusual was happening. Meanwhile, Victor could no longer hide his concern. He approached one of the executives. "Excuse me." The man turned. "Yes." Victor forced a polite smile. "How exactly do you know Sophia's husband?" The executive looked surprised. "You don't know?" Victor's stomach tightened. "Know what?" Before the executive could answer, another voice interrupted from behind. A voice instantly recognized throughout the company. The chairman had arrived. Conversation stopped. Employees straightened immediately. The chairman rarely attended social functions, making his presence extraordinary. The distinguished older man entered the ballroom with quiet confidence. Several executives greeted him. Yet after only a few seconds, he too began scanning the room, searching. Then he spotted Ethan. A broad smile appeared on his face. "There you are." The chairman walked directly toward him. The entire ballroom watched. Victor stood frozen. Sophia could barely breathe. The chairman reached Ethan and warmly shook his hand. "It's good to see you again." "You as well," Ethan replied. The chairman laughed. "I was beginning to think you'd slipped away without saying hello." "I considered it." That answer made several executives laugh. The chairman turned toward the crowd, then toward Victor, then back to Ethan. His smile widened. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced loudly enough for the entire ballroom to hear. "Before tonight ends, I believe there's someone here many of you should properly meet." The room became completely silent. Victor's face slowly lost its color. And as every employee stared toward Ethan Carter, a growing sense of disbelief swept through the ballroom. Something enormous was about to be revealed. Something that would change the entire night. The ballroom fell so silent that the faint hum of the air conditioning seemed loud. Hundreds of eyes were fixed on Ethan Carter. Only an hour earlier, many of those same people had barely noticed him. Some had laughed at him. Others had assumed he was simply the quiet husband of a talented employee. Now nobody seemed certain of anything. Sophia stood beside him, her heart pounding. Victor Langford remained near the stage, frozen in place. The confidence that had carried him throughout the evening had vanished. The chairman rested a hand on Ethan's shoulder. His smile reflected genuine respect. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, looking across the crowd, "it appears many of you have not had the opportunity to meet one of the most important people in the history of this company." Whispers immediately spread through the room. Victor swallowed hard. The chairman continued. "Years ago, when this organization existed only as a small idea and a handful of determined people working from a rented office, there was one individual who believed in its future more than anyone else." The executives standing nearby nodded. Several smiled knowingly. "He invested in it." The chairman paused. "He guided it." Another pause. "And when difficult decisions had to be made, he helped ensure its survival." The whispers grew louder. Sophia felt completely lost. What was happening? The chairman looked directly at Ethan, then back at the audience. "I would like to formally introduce Mr. Ethan Carter." A moment of silence followed. Then came the words that changed everything. "The founder and majority owner of this company." The room stopped breathing. For several seconds, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. It was as if reality itself had paused. Then gasps erupted across the ballroom. "What? Did he say owner? Founder? No way. That's Ethan." The whispers exploded into shocked conversation. Sophia stared at her husband. The words echoed in her mind. Founder. Majority owner. Founder. Majority owner. She looked at Ethan as though seeing him for the first time. Her mouth opened slightly. No words came out. Victor's face turned pale. The color drained so quickly that several nearby employees noticed immediately. He looked from the chairman to Ethan and back again. His mind desperately searched for an explanation. Some misunderstanding. Some mistake. But there wasn't one. The executives surrounding Ethan made that painfully clear. Every expression on their faces confirmed the truth. The chairman raised a hand, encouraging quiet. Gradually the room settled. I understand many of you are surprised. A few nervous laughs emerged. Mr. Carter has always preferred privacy. The chairman smiled toward Ethan. Perhaps more privacy than any successful businessman I've ever known. That earned genuine laughter. The chairman continued. While others seek recognition, Ethan has spent years focusing on innovation, investment, and long-term growth behind the scenes. Around the ballroom, employees listened carefully. Many struggled to process what they were hearing. The man who had been mocked for appearing ordinary was not merely successful. He owned the company, the entire company. One employee whispered to another. He never said anything. The other shook her head. He didn't have to. Near the front, Sophia finally found her voice. You own the company? Ethan turned toward her. A small, apologetic smile appeared. Technically, yes. Technically, she almost laughed despite her shock. You never told me. I told you I was involved. Sophia stared at him. Involved? That may have been an understatement. For the first time all evening, she couldn't help smiling, even through her disbelief. Meanwhile, Victor seemed unable to move. Every joke he had made replayed in his mind. Every insult, every smug remark, every laugh he had encouraged. One by one, they returned like echoes. Proof that he had judged a man entirely by appearances. The chairman's expression became more serious. There is another reason I wanted to make this introduction tonight. The room quieted again. He glanced toward Ethan, then toward the audience. Many people speak about leadership. His gaze drifted briefly across the ballroom. Far fewer actually demonstrated. Nobody missed the implication. Victor certainly didn't. The chairman continued. For over a decade, Ethan has helped shape this company according to a simple principle. He paused. Treat people with dignity. The room remained silent. Whether someone is an intern or an executive, respect should never depend on title, wealth, or status. Several employees lowered their eyes. They remembered the jokes, the laughter, the humiliation. The contrast between Ethan's conduct and Victor's behavior could not have been clearer. The chairman smiled again. Tonight, Ethan was given every opportunity to respond with anger. He gestured toward Ethan. Instead, he responded with grace. Many employees nodded. Some even began applauding. The applause spread quickly. Soon much of the ballroom joined in. Not because Ethan owned the company, because of how he had handled himself. Sophia felt pride swelling inside her chest. The man she knew at home, the patient, humble, kind man, was exactly the same person standing here tonight. Nothing about him had changed. Only everyone's understanding of him had. The applause eventually faded. Victor suddenly stepped forward. His movements appeared uncertain, almost desperate. Ethan, he began. Every eye turned toward him. Victor forced a strained smile. There seems to have been a misunderstanding. The words sounded weak even to him. Nobody responded. He cleared his throat. I was only joking earlier. The silence deepened. A few harmless comments. Several employees exchanged uncomfortable glances. Harmless? That wasn't how it felt. Victor continued speaking. I certainly didn't mean any offense. Ethan listened quietly, not interrupting, not reacting. That somehow made Victor even more nervous. His confidence continued to unravel. I didn't know who you were. The sentence escaped before he could stop it. The moment it did, regret flashed across his face, because everyone immediately understood what he had revealed. He believed respect depended on identity, on status, on importance. The room seemed to realize it simultaneously. Ethan finally spoke. His voice remained calm. You didn't know who I was. Victor nodded quickly. Exactly. Ethan held his gaze. That's the problem. The words landed with devastating simplicity. Victor had no response. None. The ballroom became silent once more. Sophia watched as realization spread across countless faces. Employees, managers, executives. Everyone understood the deeper truth. If Ethan had truly been an ordinary guest, Victor's behavior would still have been wrong. Ownership had not transformed the insult into misconduct. The insult itself had revealed misconduct. Victor lowered his eyes. For the first time all evening, He appeared small. The chairman stepped aside. Then he turned toward Ethan. "I believe everyone would appreciate hearing from you." The room immediately focused on Ethan again. A microphone was brought forward. An employee handed it to him. Ethan accepted it politely. He glanced across the ballroom, across hundreds of faces, some curious, some nervous, some ashamed, some inspired. The room waited. No one spoke. No one moved. And as Ethan slowly stepped onto the stage where Victor had stood earlier, the atmosphere changed completely. The audience knew they were about to hear something important, not because the owner was speaking, but because the man who had every reason to seek revenge appeared ready to do something entirely different. The ballroom remained silent as Ethan stepped onto the stage. Only an hour earlier, Victor Langford had stood in the same spot, commanding the room with confidence and authority. Now the atmosphere was entirely different. There was no laughter, no whispering, no distractions. Every person in attendance watched Ethan. The microphone rested comfortably in his hand. For a few moments, he simply looked around the room, at the employees, at the executives, at Sophia, at Victor. Then he spoke. "When I first agreed to come tonight, I expected to spend the evening quietly supporting my wife." A ripple of gentle laughter moved through the crowd. Sophia smiled. "I certainly didn't expect to be standing on this stage." More laughter followed. The tension eased slightly. Ethan paused. "But sometimes life gives us opportunities we didn't plan for." His voice remained calm and measured. "I think tonight has become one of those opportunities." The room grew attentive once again. Ethan continued. "When people hear the word leadership, they often think about power." He slowly walked across the stage. "They think about titles." He took another step. "Corner offices." Another. "Authority." The audience listened carefully. But true leadership begins much earlier than that. He stopped. "It begins with how we treat people when we believe they have nothing to offer us." The words settled heavily across the ballroom. Nobody needed an explanation. Everyone understood exactly what he meant. Several employees glanced toward Victor. Others stared down at their tables. Ethan continued. "When I entered this room tonight, many people made assumptions about me." He smiled slightly. "To be fair, people have been making assumptions about me my entire life." A few chuckles emerged. "I've learned something valuable because of it." He looked around the room. "Most assumptions tell us very little about the person being judged." His gaze moved slowly across the audience. "But they tell us a great deal about the person doing the judging." Silence followed. The statement struck home. Victor sat motionless. Every word seemed directed at him. Yet Ethan never mentioned his name. Not once. The absence of personal attacks made the lesson even more powerful. Ethan wasn't trying to humiliate anyone. He was trying to teach. "I wasn't upset tonight because someone underestimated me." He glanced briefly toward Sophia. "I was upset because too many people seemed comfortable watching it happen." The room became noticeably uncomfortable. Employees shifted in their seats. Several remembered laughing. Others remembered saying nothing. Neither memory felt good. Ethan nodded slowly. "I understand why." His tone remained compassionate. "Many people stay silent because they fear consequences." No one could deny that. Victor's influence within the company was well known. "I don't blame anyone for feeling that pressure." He paused. "But I do believe we can build something better." The audience listened closely. The speech had become more than a response to one evening. It was becoming a vision for the future. "When I helped build this company years ago, we didn't have much." A smile appeared on his face. "Actually, that's not true." More laughter. "We had almost nothing." The room laughed with him. "We had a tiny office, old furniture, second-hand equipment, and a mountain of challenges." Several executives smiled at the memories. They had lived through those difficult years alongside him. "There were times when we weren't sure we'd survive." The room quieted. Ethan's voice softened. But something extraordinary happened. He looked toward the employees. "We discovered that people are capable of remarkable things when they're respected." Many listeners nodded. "We succeeded because talented people worked together. People trusted one another. People believed their contributions mattered." His expression grew serious again. "Not because of one leader, Not because of one executive, not because of one owner. The room remained silent. We succeeded because every person mattered. A wave of applause began. This time it wasn't polite. It was genuine, heartfelt. Ethan waited patiently for the applause to fade. Then he continued. Over the years, our company grew larger. His eyes moved around the ballroom. Success arrived. Recognition arrived. Opportunities arrived. He paused. But success creates a danger. The audience listened carefully. It becomes easy to forget the values that created it. Silence returned. The statement resonated deeply. Many people knew exactly what he meant. A company could grow. Profits could increase. Awards could accumulate. Yet culture could quietly deteriorate. Respect could disappear. Humility could vanish. And eventually, success itself could become fragile. Ethan's gaze shifted briefly toward Victor. Not with anger. Not with triumph. Simply with honesty. A person's character is revealed most clearly when they hold power over others. The room became completely still. If someone treats influential people with respect but looks down on everyone else, he shook his head gently. That isn't leadership. Several employees nodded immediately. Some even applauded. Ethan continued. Leadership means making others feel valued. It means creating opportunities. It means lifting people up rather than pushing them down. His voice carried conviction born from experience. Anyone can demand respect. The room listened. But earning respect is something entirely different. The applause returned again. Louder this time. Sophia watched from her seat, her eyes shining with pride. This was the Ethan she knew. The same man who thanked waiters, who remembered birthdays, who treated everyone with kindness regardless of status. She suddenly understood why so many executives respected him. It wasn't because he owned the company. It was because he embodied the principles he spoke about. After the applause faded, Ethan took a deep breath. There is one final thing I'd like to announce tonight. The room immediately quieted. The executives exchanged curious glances. Even Victor looked up. Ethan's expression became serious. In the coming weeks, we will begin a comprehensive review of leadership practices throughout the organization. A wave of surprise spread through the audience. The executives nodded. Clearly, they had already discussed this. Ethan continued. We will evaluate how managers support their teams, how employees are treated, how decisions are made. His voice remained steady, and whether our actions truly reflect the values we claim to believe in. The significance of the announcement was impossible to miss. This was not a symbolic gesture. Real changes were coming. Meaningful changes. The audience listened intently. This review isn't about punishment. Ethan clarified. It's about accountability. The distinction mattered. We cannot improve what we refuse to examine. Several employees applauded immediately. Others joined. Soon the ballroom echoed with approval. From many people, this was exactly what they had hoped to hear for years. A workplace built on respect. A culture where integrity mattered. A company that lived by its principles. Ethan smiled. I believe we can become better. He looked across the room one final time. Not because we're forced to, but because we choose to. The applause that followed was thunderous. People rose from their chairs, one by one, then table by table, until nearly the entire ballroom stood. The standing ovation continued for nearly a minute. Sophia stood too, tears gathering in her eyes. She wasn't emotional because her husband owned the company. She was emotional because of the man he was. Across the room, Victor remained seated. The applause surrounded him like a storm. He knew what everyone else knew. Tonight had changed everything. The review Ethan announced would examine leadership throughout the organization. And deep down, Victor already feared what that review might uncover. As the applause continued and employees celebrated a hopeful future, a new chapter for the company was beginning. One built not on fear or status, but on dignity, accountability, and respect. And for some people in the room, those changes would arrive much sooner than they expected. The standing ovation slowly faded, but the impact of Ethan Carter's speech remained long after the guests left the Grand Meridian Hotel that night. Employees talked about it in elevators. They discussed it over coffee. They shared it during meetings. For weeks afterward, the company buzzed with conversations about leadership, respect, and accountability. And true to his word, Ethan wasted no time. The comprehensive review began almost immediately. Independent consultants were brought in. Anonymous employee surveys were distributed. Managers were evaluated. Departments were examined. Policies were reviewed. For the first time in years, employees felt comfortable speaking honestly. Many stories emerged. Some were positive. Others were troubling. Patterns began to appear. Several leaders were praised for creating supportive environments where employees felt valued and encouraged. Others received serious criticism. Among the names that appeared repeatedly was Victor Langford. The findings revealed something important. The incident at the gala had not been an isolated mistake. It had been part of a larger pattern. Employees described years of dismissive behavior, public criticism, favoritism, intimidation, and a culture where many people felt afraid to challenge him. The review team carefully documented everything. Facts mattered. Evidence mattered. Fairness mattered. Ethan insisted on that. No decisions would be based on a single evening. They would be based on the complete picture. When the investigation concluded, the results were clear. Victor Langford was removed from his leadership position. The announcement was made professionally and respectfully. There was no public humiliation, no revenge, no dramatic confrontation, just accountability. The same principle Ethan had spoken about on stage. Throughout the company, employees reacted with relief. Many felt that a burden had finally been lifted. For years, they had adapted themselves to Victor's behavior. Now they could focus on their work without fear. At the same time, new leadership programs were introduced. Managers attended workshops centered on communication, mentorship, and team development. Employee feedback became an important part of performance evaluations. Recognition programs highlighted collaboration rather than competition. Slowly but steadily, the culture began to change. People noticed it. Teams became stronger. Departments worked together more effectively. Employee satisfaction improved. Trust grew. And as trust grew, so did performance. Ironically, the company became even more successful than before. Meanwhile, Sophia's career flourished. Without office politics interfering with her opportunities, her talent became impossible to overlook. Her ideas received attention. Her projects gained visibility. Her hard work earned recognition. Several months after the gala, she was promoted to a senior strategic role. The announcement drew enthusiastic congratulations from coworkers throughout the organization. Nobody questioned whether she deserved it, because she absolutely did. One afternoon, after receiving the news, Sophia walked into Ethan's home office. He was reviewing documents when she entered. "You seem happy," he said. She held up the promotion letter. A grin spread across his face. "There it is. There it is." She sat across from him. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Sophia laughed. "You know, my life became much more complicated after discovering my husband owns my company." Ethan laughed too. "I can imagine." She pointed at him. "You kept that secret very well." "I wasn't hiding it." "You absolutely were. I simply didn't mention it." Sophia shook her head. "That's called hiding it." They both laughed. Then her expression softened. "Can I tell you something?" "Of course." She leaned forward. "The thing that surprised me most wasn't your success." Ethan listened quietly. "It was your reaction that night." His smile faded into thoughtful silence. "You had every reason to be angry. Maybe you could have embarrassed Victor in front of everyone. I could have, but you didn't." Ethan looked out the window for a moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm. "My goal was never to win against Victor." Sophia waited. "My goal was to help the company become better." She smiled. That answer was exactly what she expected, and exactly why she loved him. Months passed. The changes continued. Employees adapted to a healthier culture. New leaders emerged. Old habits disappeared. Trust strengthened. Then, almost exactly 1 year after the infamous gala, the company gathered once again for its annual celebration. This time, the atmosphere felt entirely different. The ballroom was filled with energy. Not nervous energy. Not competitive energy. Positive energy. Teams laughed together. Managers mingled comfortably with employees. Executives spent time listening rather than commanding. The difference was visible everywhere. Sophia stood near one of the large windows overlooking the city lights. Her silver evening dress shimmered beneath the chandeliers. Ethan joined her, holding 2 glasses of sparkling water. 1 year later, he said. She accepted a glass. Can you believe it? Not really. They looked around the room. Employees were enjoying themselves. Conversations flowed naturally. People seemed genuinely happy. Sophia smiled. It's amazing how much can change in a year. It is. Several employees approached to greet them. Unlike the previous gala, nobody treated Ethan as a mysterious stranger. Yet something important remained unchanged. He still carried himself exactly the same way. No arrogance, no need for attention, no desire to impress anyone, just quiet confidence and kindness. After the employees moved on, Sophia looked at him. Do you ever regret staying out of the spotlight for so long? Ethan considered the question. Then he shook his head. No. Why not? He glanced around the ballroom, at the people laughing, the teams celebrating, the culture that had transformed. Because what matters isn't whether people know your name. Sophia smiled. What matters then? Ethan returned her smile. The impact you leave behind. For a moment, neither spoke. The answer seemed to capture everything. The company had grown because people mattered. The culture had improved because respect mattered. The future looked brighter because character mattered. Not titles, not status, not appearances. Character. As the evening continued, the chairman eventually took the stage. He welcomed everyone and reflected on the company's progress over the past year. Then he said something that drew applause from every corner of the ballroom. The greatest achievement of this organization has never been financial success. The room listened. It has always been the people who make that success possible. The applause thundered through the ballroom. Ethan and Sophia exchanged a glance. Neither needed to say anything. They both understood. A year ago, this room had witnessed humiliation, assumptions, pride, and disrespect. Now it represented something entirely different. Unity, growth, and dignity. As music filled the ballroom and employees celebrated together, Ethan quietly slipped an arm around Sophia's shoulders. Together, they looked across the company he had helped build. Not merely a successful company, but a better one. And in that moment, surrounded by laughter, friendship, and mutual respect, Ethan knew that the legacy he had always hoped to create was finally taking shape. Not a legacy of wealth, not a legacy of power, but a legacy of kindness, humility, and leadership. The kind of legacy that lasts long after titles are forgotten.